Hello makers! Today I am making another card for the Whimsy Stamps Halloweeners design team, and so today's card I hope is going to be a quick one and fun if I can remember how to do the technique. So what you need is an A2 size card base that is top folding, so this one folds at the top, and then we need some dies. So this is what I'm using. I'm using this die for this technique. So it's a word die with shadow, ink, word, and shadow die. And so I'm going to be using this to actually cut out from the bottom down here. And I hope that I can remember how to do this technique. So I learned it actually watching a video by Jennifer McGuire. I get a lot of inspiration from her. And then I love to transfer that into the supplies that I have on hand. And so I want to use it with the Whimsy Stamps products today. So I am going to be using the word die to cut out at the bottom, and then it will actually be holding the whole card up. It's kind of a floating card front type thing. So I'm going to be doing that. For the rest of the card, this part up here, I want to make some paper. And so I'm using the Galore background. So it's a big red rubber stamp and it's just full of stars, all kinds of stars. And I'm going to be using another technique that I learned from Jennifer McGuire years and years ago, and it has become a go-to. I use it all the time. And so that is the iron off resist technique. So I'm going to be using that today with the Galore background. And then at the top, I am going to have this darling die set. So this is the Twinkle Scribble Die, and you can see it's almost like a wreath. So it's a scribbly circle with stars cut out of it. Love it. So that's going to go at the top up here, and then in the middle of it I want to have one of the bats from the Batty die set. So I think the big one will be a great one to put in the middle there. And this die set comes with several sizes of bats and then several sizes of eyes that you cut out to go in the bats as well. So I'll have the bat in there. So the top will be fairly simple, and then we'll have that bold sentiment that will be holding up the front of the card. And so I hope I can remember how to do this technique. It's been several months and I didn't save the video. So wish me luck, and I want to invite you to come along with me and let's get making. The first thing I had to do is to cut the word out of the front so it would float. And so I picked the biggest shadow die from the Eek word and shadow die set, and I'm taping it onto the bottom front of my top folding card. And now I'm getting out my cutting plates and my cutting platform for my vagabond. I'm placing the top cutting plate, as you can see, not all the way to the top. So I don't want to cut that word out completely. I just want to cut the outline out of most of it and leave it attached to the rest of the card. So I probably didn't need to do all this taping, but since it's my first time, I went a little overboard. All right, so I ran it through the machine, and as I'm pulling the tape off, you can see that that word is still attached to the card. And so now I'm just going to need to do a little bit of hand cutting. So I'm lining it up and I'm getting the ruler so that it's going to go across exactly where the cutting plate went across to leave the word still attached to the front of the card. I'm just drawing some lines so that I know where to cut. And all you have to do is take your scissors and just snip right up to where the die cut left off. That's my cat Leota. And there you go. It stands up. I can't believe I did it. All right, now I need to make some paper to cover it. So this is the Galaxy stamp, and I'm putting some clear embossing powder on, or ink on it. And I'm just using my hands to press into that. And this is clear embossing powder. So you want clear embossing ink and clear embossing powder. I'm doing this on a distress watercolor cardstock, so it's white. And then I decided to do a few just to see what I thought about colors. And it's always good, I think, when I'm making backgrounds sometimes to make several, and then I have some to use later on. Now, one color scheme is going to be purples with Wilted Violet, Dusty Concord, and Villainous Potion, and the other will be Broken China, Uncharted Mariner, and Black Soot. So I'm going to put the blues away, and we're going to get started blending the purples. Now I'm using my new Tim Holtz Studio Mat. The media mat works just as well. So when you're blending, it's good to always start off of the paper and then blend onto the paper using, I don't use a lot of pressure, and the slick surface really will make the blending much smoother than if you're doing it on something that's going to grip the foam when you're blending. So you can see it goes on very smooth. I did add a little bit of black soot to that purple one because I did want it a little darker, but I left it lighter in the center. So this one I did have the lighter center. And I did speed this up a lot, so it takes me a little bit longer because I don't have a heavy hand when I do this. I do it lightly. All right, now we're going to get some magic starting here. So I am using spritzers. Spritzers do not have any ink in them. They have a clear colorant that has mica pearls. And so I spray them with the mica pearls and then I let them dry. So I'm showing you that they're completely dry. I'm not having any mica come off onto my hands. I have a clean towel. I have my craft iron. I have a piece of plain paper, and I have my dry, embossed, spritzed backgrounds. And so now comes the magic. I am using the resist technique with the embossing. And so I'm reheating that embossing with my craft iron. And I'm calling it my craft iron because I only use it in my craft room. Now you can see how that embossing powder remelted and soaked up into the printer paper. And so I just tried it again just to make sure I got it all. And then look, see how the stars aren't shiny, but that background with the mica spritz is shiny? All right, so I'm going to do the blue one. And look how quickly that embossing powder just remelts and soaks up into the paper. And then the stars are white, flat, and the resist worked perfectly. I love how the background's just shimmery with that little bit, and you can see the difference there. See how the inks and everything kind of colored the top of that clear embossing powder. So the iron off is really key. Now I needed some paper for the bat and the wreath, and I wasn't sure what I was going to do, so I used some mica stain, which does have colorant along with the mica pearls, different than the spritz. I used Empty Tomb. This one's Empty Tomb, and the other one was Specimen, the green one. So I set those aside and I measured the front of my card so that I would be able to have a piece that was square and would fit there on the front of the card. And then I needed some paper to cut out the word eek. And so I am just using some spice marmalade and just again blending it onto some distressed watercolor cardstock. I wanted it darker at the bottom and lighter at the top. And then I'm adding some more distress spritz and spice marmalade. Again, the only color in a spritz is in the mica pearl. It is not in the liquid. So I just did one quick spritz. You may not even have seen it. Just one little spritz over the top, just as kind of like a finishing spray to give it just a little pearl. And now I'm putting it on the medium shadow, or the smaller shadow that I cut out just in white distress watercolor. And now I want to make one of the scribble wreaths. I keep calling it a wreath even though it's not a wreath, but the scribble circle die. So I used, again, the spice marmalade and again the spice marmalade spritz just so it would be shimmery. And I put some extra of the purple background on the inside at the bottom. And then I have that square at the top. So it was a good thing I made two so that I had enough to go ahead and fit in there. And now I'm going to go ahead and put the shadow and the word over that shadow at the bottom, the floating shadow at the bottom. Now I've got the scribble die in the orange, and there's my little bat. I cut him out of the empty tomb one. And I'm just going to add a little bit of some embellishments from This Calls for Confetti. These are the Raven Pearl embellishments. So I'm just going to go ahead and attach those just as a little bit of interest on the front. And we're pretty much done with this card. It worked. Thank you so much for cheering me on. I did get it finished, admittedly with a few bumps along the way. I did do a few colors when I first started that I didn't like, and so I redid the colors for the scribble die and for the sentiment, but I ended up really loving them. So I've got that purple in the background. Hopefully you can kind of see some of the shimmer on the background. And then there's actually some shimmer on the sentiment as well and on the wreath. Those have spritz. The background shimmer is also from spritz. So it's just adds that little bit. The only one that's mica stain is the bat. So I used the, goodness, that was the Empty Tomb on black heavy stock. And I think it gives it a cool texture. Just by sight, it's not really textured when you feel it, but it looks like it's textured, doesn't it? And then I did add a few details with my Jelly Roll pen. And I went over these with a water brush to kind of make them look a little bit 3D. So in person, they do stand out a little bit 3D-ish. I did the fangs, did a little bit on the inside of the ears. And I don't think that I actually videotaped that. So anyway, yeah, I did add a few details to that, and then I added some of the Raven Pearl embellishments from This Calls for Confetti, just to add a little bit more texture. And then I know you can't see it, it stands up like that. And so I will put in pictures of what it looks like when it stands up. But basically when it stands up, this is what you see. Okay, you don't see the whole, this whole bottom part when it stands up. So I think that's pretty cool how you just see this floating sentiment when it's standing and you're looking at it. I love it. So thank you for cheering me on. I had a great time trying this to see if I could do it like I saw Jennifer do on her channel. So thank you so much for sticking with me as I tried it. I hope that as I did it that it made sense. And, you know, if you have any questions, I always promise I will do my best to try and answer them to the best of my ability. So go ahead and leave those in the comments below or on my blog at playswellwithpaper.blogspot.com. I want to thank you so much for watching, and I want to wish you a very creative day.